I never imagined that a lazy afternoon spent among dusty shelves in my old workshop would become a moment that reshaped everything I thought I knew about myself and my family. What my nephew shared with me that day still lingers in my thoughts, not because it was shocking, but because it uncovered a truth I had been blind to for years. Before we dive in, drop a comment below and let me know where you're tuning in from. And if stories like this speak to you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support means more than words can express. I was perched on a rickety wooden stool in my workshop that afternoon, finally tackling a mountain of forgotten boxes I had been ignoring since winter. Dust particles floated lazily through beams of late afternoon sunlight, glittering like suspended gold. The air carried the faint scent of old varnish and pine shavings from a workbench my late husband had built decades ago. There's something strangely peaceful about this space, a refuge where memories rest in dusty containers and forgotten corners, waiting for someone courageous enough to rediscover them. I'm a woman past 50 now, and truthfully, some days I feel every single one of those years, especially when it comes to carrying family burdens. My sister Patricia has leaned on me more heavily since her marriage fell apart, and honestly, I don't mind. Her boy Marcus has always been respectful, considerate, the type of young man who opens doors without being asked and shows genuine curiosity about others. He's 21 now, tall with that slightly uncertain stance young men have before they learn to own their presence. I've watched him grow up, yet somehow I never truly saw him, if that makes any sense. He was always just the child chasing butterflies in the garden, the teenager lost in video games, the college kid who appeared during holidays and family gatherings. But that particular day was different. I heard the workshop door groan open behind me. I assumed it was Patricia, probably coming to borrow something she'd never remember to return. Instead, Marcus stepped inside, carefully pulling the door shut behind him. He offered a weak smile, the kind that doesn't quite light up the eyes. "Aunt Helen, do you have a moment?" His voice carried a weight that made me freeze mid-motion. I wiped the dust from my palms onto my work pants and gestured for him to come closer. He moved hesitantly, glancing around as if the familiar tools and boxes had suddenly become foreign territory. He lowered himself onto the edge of an old crate, elbows resting on his knees, fingers interlocked. "Everything okay?" I asked, keeping my voice light, though something tightened in my chest. I've raised 2 children of my own. I recognize the signs of a burdened soul. He drew in a long breath before responding. I didn't know who else I could turn to. That single sentence pulled me completely into the moment. The workshop seemed to grow quieter, as if the walls themselves were leaning in to listen. "Well, you came to the right place," I said softly, "and I'm not going anywhere." He nodded, but kept his gaze fixed on the concrete floor. For a heartbeat, I wondered if something terrible had happened, trouble with his studies, a falling out with friends, or perhaps worry about Patricia. But then he lifted his head, and what I saw in his eyes wasn't fear. It was something gentler, heavier, like an emotion he had shouldered for far too long. "I've been feeling completely lost," he finally admitted, "like I'm supposed to have my whole life mapped out by now, but I don't. Everyone keeps saying I'll figure it out eventually, but nobody actually listens when I tell them I'm terrified. Except, well, you've always seemed to understand things somehow." That caught me completely off guard. Me? Understand? I've spent half my existence pretending to have answers, even on days when I could barely contain my own uncertainties. But hearing him say that, hearing that he saw something steady in me, created a strange warmth in my chest, this peculiar blend of pride and guilt. How many times had I brushed him off with a casual, "Oh, you'll figure it out," without realizing he needed something more? I pulled my stool closer. "Marcus, everyone feels lost in their 20s. I wish someone had told me that when I was your age. But you always seem to know exactly what to say," he continued, finally meeting my eyes. "I feel like I can talk to you about things I can't even share with Mom." I didn't interrupt. I simply let him speak. He told me about his classes, how he had chosen a major because it seemed practical, not because it held any meaning for him. He talked about feeling like an outsider among friends who appeared so confident about their futures. And then he admitted something that struck me deeper than I anticipated. "I feel like I'm letting everyone down," he whispered. There it was, the truth he had carried like a hidden burden. I reached over and rested my hand gently on his arm, a simple gesture, comforting and grounding. "You're not letting anyone down," I said softly. "Certainly not me. You're finding your way, and that takes time, more time than people ever want to admit." He released a breath, his shoulders loosening like someone finally granted permission to rest. In that moment, surrounded by old memories and accumulated dust, I understood something important too, that sometimes the people we still think of as children are quietly transforming into adults with their own inner storms. And sometimes all they need is someone willing to sit with them in the middle of the chaos without judgment, without rushing them toward resolution. The sun descended lower, casting elongated golden shapes across the concrete floor. Neither of us spoke for a while. We didn't need to. I didn't realize it then, but what Marcus would confess next, the deeper truth he wasn't quite ready to voice, would transform the way I saw not only him, but myself, and the role I still had to play in someone else's journey. The following day, I couldn't stop thinking about Marcus long after he had gone, even while preparing dinner, sorting through mail, and moving through the small rituals that hold a day together. The memory of his troubled expression kept returning. I've always had a tender spot for him, maybe because he reminded me of myself at that age, quietly thoughtful, somewhat uncertain, always trying to appear stronger than he actually felt. But something about yesterday lingered more powerfully than I expected. I woke early the next morning, well before the sun had fully risen. The house was silent, that particular gentle stillness that feels like a held breath. A thin ribbon of light crept through my kitchen blinds, touching the edge of the table where Marcus had once sat as a child, scribbling pictures of spaceships and dinosaurs with crayons. I made myself a cup of coffee and stood there momentarily, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of a car engine starting down the street. Something told me I hadn't yet heard the real reason he came to see me. By midday, I was in the backyard clearing fallen leaves from the stone pathway. The mild breeze carried the fragrance of early autumn, crisp foliage, a hint of distant woodlands, and the cool earthiness of the trees that bordered my property. I wasn't expecting visitors, so when I heard footsteps behind me, I turned slowly, half anticipating a neighbor. It was Marcus. He stood there with his hands buried in the pockets of his jacket, his expression calmer than the day before, but still carrying that quiet heaviness in his eyes. I couldn't help but smile, though I kept my tone casual. "Back again so soon?" He shrugged. "I hope that's all right. I wasn't sure if you were busy." "You can always drop by, you know that." He nodded, then looked past me toward the weathered wooden bench beneath the old oak tree. "Could we sit for a bit?" We walked to the bench, and when we settled down, the wood groaned softly under our weight. The oak leaves above us rustled as though exchanging secrets among themselves. I waited for him to speak first. Something in his posture told me he had rehearsed this conversation more than once. "Aunt Helen," he said slowly, "yesterday I didn't tell you everything." I kept my breathing steady, listening, not pushing. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees again, just like he had in the workshop. "I didn't come just because I'm uncertain about school or the future. That's part of it, but there's something else." His voice wavered just enough for me to notice. I shifted slightly, turning my body toward him so he knew I had my complete attention. "You don't have to rush," I said gently. "Take all the time you need." He gave a small, grateful nod. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The breeze softened, settling into a comfortable stillness around us. A sparrow hopped across the lawn, occasionally glancing our way as though curious about the heavy atmosphere between us. Finally, he exhaled and spoke again. "I've been carrying this feeling," he said, choosing his words carefully, "a feeling that something in my life isn't aligning with who I really am, a feeling I've been too scared to acknowledge because I didn't want to burden my mom or make anyone think something was wrong with me." My chest tightened, the way it does when you sense someone is on the verge of saying something deeply significant. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration and relief battling in his expression. "I don't really know how to explain it. It's not about academics. It's not about friendships. It's more like I'm working so hard to be the person I think everyone expects me to be, and I'm exhausted. I don't even know if I like the version of myself I've been performing." His voice wasn't dramatic or loud. It carried more authenticity than intensity, more vulnerability than fear. I felt my heart reach toward him with a tenderness I hadn't anticipated. I placed my hand on the bench between us, not touching him directly, but close enough for him to know I was steady and present. "It's perfectly okay to feel that way," I said softly. "Many people experience something similar, though most never speak it aloud. It's courageous, Marcus, truly courageous." He swallowed hard, and for the first time since he arrived, he looked directly into my eyes. "I didn't know who else I could confide in about this. And I'm honored you chose me. You're not alone in this. Whatever you're uncovering about yourself, whatever you're working through, it's yours to explore at your own pace." The tension in his shoulders eased just slightly, though his expression remained thoughtful. "I'm not sure where to begin," he admitted quietly. "You've already begun," I told him, "by speaking it out loud." He let that sink in. The breeze stirred again, swirling a few fallen leaves around our feet. We sat there in silence, but it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It was the kind that wraps around two people who are learning to communicate in a deeper and more honest way. After a moment, he said, "I feel like you understand me better than almost anyone." I felt something warm settle inside me. Not a romantic feeling, nothing inappropriate, just a profound human connection, the kind of bond that forms when someone trusts you with the fragile parts of their soul. "I understand what it feels like to question who you are," I told him truthfully, "and I understand how difficult it is to voice those things. You're not strange. You're not lost in a way that can't be found. You're growing." He smiled softly, like he wasn't sure he deserved to smile, but was grateful for the permission. The sunlight filtered through the oak leaves, casting a soft, shifting pattern of gold across his face. For a moment, I saw not the boy who used to run around with grass-stained knees, but the young man he was becoming, thoughtful, open, searching. "I think there's more I want to tell you," he said, voice quiet but steady, "but I'm not sure if today is the right time." "That's perfectly fine, whenever you're ready." And in that moment, I knew his story, whatever form it ultimately took, wasn't simply about fear or doubt. It was about transformation. And somehow, in ways I didn't yet fully comprehend, I was meant to be part of it.